The Trump administration has stated that mass deportation is one of their major goals for their next administration. So in this video, instead of scaring you and being like, oh, mass deportation, which you can't control, right? We know you can't control that, but what you can control is how you prepare in case you are in a situation where you are picked up by ICE. Protecting yourself and your family is something that you can do and that they cannot take away from you. So in this video, I'll break down how you can create a family preparedness plan in case you are picked up by ICE. If you are undocumented and you have children in the US, I know one of your biggest fears is not being able to care for your children. If you're picked up by ICE, what will happen to your kids? All of those things. I have the same fear last year when I was, talking to my husband. What would happen to us if one of us passes away? What happens to our kids? And in that situation, instead of freaking out and just feeling defeated by the thought of it, we came up with a plan and we did our estate planning. We have, our powers of attorney. We know who is going to be taking care of our kids if anything were to happen to us. So in this video, I want to give you the same peace of mind that I got from doing that estate planning. This is, of course, very different from doing an estate planning because if you have to use this plan, it means that you were picked up by ICE and now you may be in deportation proceedings or being deported. So let's talk about what you can do. Make sure you have a plan for your children and make sure that you know that you should not be scared when you're doing this process, okay? This video is meant to empower you. It's not meant to make you be afraid, okay? This is information that you can use to know and have peace of mind that if anything were to happen, that you know that you have provided things for your children and make sure that they will be taken care of. The first thing you want to do is have a discussion with your family, right? Make sure everyone understands what the family status is as far as immigration is concerned. Are there people in your family that are US citizens that have actual status and then people that don't have status? Well, you need to be aware of this. You need to communicate with your family and come up with this plan together. Then you want to gather all your important documents, birth certificates, passports, everything that you can think of and have it in one place. Make sure there's copies and all of that. The first thing you're going to do is a general planning where you sit with your family and you discuss your immigration status, who should be taking care of the children if anything were to happen to you and you were picked up by ICE, right? If those situations happen, where do the kids go? Do they know who to talk to, who to call, all of those things? Your kids need to be in the loop because they need to know what is going on. And by including your kids in this discussion, if you do get picked up by ICE, it's going to reduce the fear that they have because they know we have had this conversation. I know exactly what to do, who is going to be taking care of me, all of those things. So it gives them a sense of ownership over everything. Next thing, you want to gather all your documents, make copies of everything so that you know if there's any documents you need that you don't already have, or if you need to get an original of a document that you only have copies of. Then you need to make sure that you know your rights, okay? Every single person in your family needs to know that they have a right to remain silent, a right to an attorney, right? You need to make sure that you know all your rights so that you are not in a position where maybe you may be home and ICE knocks on the door and your child goes and opens the door. Right? You need to make sure you're having those know your rights conversations with the whole family and that they understand what to do if someone knocks on the door. Get an adult, right? Get an adult. That's what we do in my house is if someone knocks on the door, my children know not to open the door. They know to get an adult and to wait for that adult to get there and make the decision whether to open the door or not. So it's really, really important that you include your children in these conversations because you want to make sure everyone is on the same page. So I have a video from last week where I went over the rights of everyone in the US, including undocumented immigrants, so that you know what your rights are and that you actually use it. Okay? Don't just know what it is, but know how to invoke your rights, use your rights. All right? Once you've had that general discussion, you want to get really into details about childcare. So if you have children under the age of 18, you really want to think through who's going to care for your child if you're picked up by ICE. If you're a single parent, this is even more important because you don't have the other parent there to take over, right? So you want to make sure that if you are making this plan, you know who your children are going to go to, and you are having this conversation with those people as well, right? You don't just pick someone without letting them know. Make them part of this planning process. What would it look like? Do they have enough room for your children? All of those things, you want to discuss it. So as part of that child care planning, you can fill out a caregiver information sheet, right? So the caregiver information sheet will have things like what school the kids go to, what their medical needs are, everything that you can think of for your children should be on that sheet so that whoever you are picking or whoever is willing to take on your children in case you're picked up by ICE has all the information they need to basically step in and immediately start being able to care for the children because they know all their information. And you want to make sure that your children's school know about this person, right? That this person is authorized to pick up the children from school and drop them off to school. So that's really, really important because if they are not authorized prior to you being picked up by ICE, the school will not release your children into their custody. So you need to make sure that once you pick the person that's going to care for your children, that you also put them on the pickup list with the school. Okay? Make them the emergency contact. Whatever you need to make sure that they are on there so that in case of the emergency of you being picked up by ICE, they already have access to pick your children up from school, to drop them off to school, to talk to the school on their behalf. Right? You want to make sure you put those things in place, and that is very important to basically keep a routine for your children. You don't want to be picked up by ICE and then your children are not able to go to school. They're not able to be picked up from school if it happens in the middle of the day. So you want to make sure that you have those things in place. One thing that, while you're thinking about this, right? Think about this plan as a way to create, stability for your kids. Yes, you're going to be in ICE custody, and that's going to be devastating. However, by creating this plan, you know that at the very least, they'll still be able to go to school. They'll still be able to get their medical needs met. At least everything else, other than their parent not being there, other than their parent being in ICE detention, they can still have a sense of stability in other parts of their life. Another thing you want to do beyond just adding the caregiver to the school list is if your state has like a caregiver authorization or something you can do like a temporary agent authorization. I know in Massachusetts we have a caregiver authorization affidavit that we can file with the court, and with that affidavit, the caregiver can make decisions for the child for a certain amount of time, right? If you are able to get that caregiver affidavit done in your state or something similar to that, where you're giving someone authorization to care for your kids, to make decisions for your kids when you are not able to, go ahead and do it. Because if you are picked up by ICE and your child has a medical issue, or the caregiver has to make a decision for your child's well-being, they may not be able to make that decision without additional documentation, not just being able to pick them up from school, but these affidavits or guardianships or temporary like all those things help make sure that that caregiver is fully able to care for your child and make decisions for them. Another thing we suggest is if you have not registered your child's birth with your home embassy, right? So your country of origin has an embassy in the US and you have not registered your child's birth with them, go ahead and do that. The reason I suggest doing this, and most people suggest doing this, is because if you are from a country where, US citizens do not have a right to enter the country without a visa, or they can't live in the country without some form of long-term visa, if your children only have their US citizenship and they have not obtained documentation showing that they are also a citizen of your country of birth or country of citizenship, they would be in a position where they may not even be able to go with you, even if you want to take them with you. So it's really important that you register their birth with your embassy and also get them a passport, okay? Get them a passport as well, just to make everything as easy as possible in case you decide to leave the US, or if you have to leave the US, you can actually take your children with you. Now, I always suggest not just getting them the passport from your country of origin, but also making sure that if your children are US citizens, that they have their US passports. Okay. Like I said, there's countries where US citizens may be able to visit for 6 months, right? Or visit for a couple months. At a minimum, if they have their US passport, they may be able to travel with you, and then you can figure out how to get them their passport and their residency in your country of origin. But if they have 0 passports, they're not going to be able to travel. So you want to make sure that part of your preparedness planning is not just the child care, but making sure that they have the documentation that they need in case they need to travel with you. When you're thinking about who to pick as your child's caregiver, here's a few things you can think about, all right? One, they have to be an adult, meaning they have to be over the age of 18, because only an adult can technically be a legal caregiver. You want to think about, is this person responsible? Has this person ever had a criminal history that has to do with children? Okay. Has this person had any interaction with Department of Children Services? All right. You want to make sure that you are looking at all of that when you're making this decision. I understand there's going to be situations where you may not have options available and your only option may be that person, but you want to really think about this fully before you make those decisions. And then finally, you want to know if the person is able and willing to take your child and provide the caregiving needs for your child. Okay, that's why I said at the beginning, in the planning stage, you want to have those conversations, not just with your child, but whoever you want to be the caregiver, you want to get them involved in that early process. And then once they're involved and they're willing to take care of your child and you're satisfied that they're responsible enough to care for your child, now you want to talk about if you want to do an informal agreement. Hey, can you take care of my child if something ever happens and I get picked up by ICE? That is an informal agreement. Or you can have a more formal agreement like a caregiver affidavit authorization, which is something we have in Massachusetts. Other states may call it something else, but it gives the caregiver the right to care for the child, to make decisions for the child, in some cases up to 2 years that is valid for. So you want to make sure that you have something documented saying that this person can care for your child. Each state is going to have something different or call it something different, but that is basically what you're looking for, a more formal authorization that you're giving this person the rights to make decisions for your children. Now, let's talk about what documents you should be gathering as you're going through this process, right? As you're planning and you're putting together your preparedness plan, let's talk about what documents you should have. You should have your passport, birth certificate, marriage license, insurance documents, health insurance, car insurance, any insurance that you have, family court documents. So if there's a guardianship, if there's any custody paperwork, you want to make sure you have all of that. You want to have all your immigration documents. So if you've ever had any immigration cases, you want to have that, especially the ones that have your A number on it. You want to make sure you have all of those. Your driver's license, your social security card, your ITIN number, your registry for your children, so their birth certificate, or if you registered them with your embassy, making sure that you have that registration as well. Their vital information page, your children's vital information page that we talked about, like, where they go to school, who is their pediatrician, all those things. You want to make sure you have all of that with the documentation that we're talking about. If you do have that formal caregiver affidavit or guardianship or a temporary agent authorization, whatever your state calls it, if you do have that, you want to make sure you have that in your packet, that for that preparedness planning. Then finally, you want to have emergency contacts for all the emergency contacts. So if you have a specific family member, a lawyer, whoever you want that caregiver to be able to reach out to, whoever you want people to be able to talk to on your behalf, police, fire, all of those emergency numbers, you want to make sure that you're putting it on that list. Finally, if you have any other important documents that I have not mentioned, make sure you put it there, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're picked up by ICE and you need those documents, and the person you have selected as a caregiver does not have access to them, and then it causes delays in either getting a lawyer to assist with your case or getting ICE to release you. So you want to make sure that you have all of these things in a secure place, and that you are giving copies of all of these things either to your attorney or to your trusted family member or friend. And like I said at the beginning, the point of this video is not to scare you, but to give you information that can actually help you and that you can put your energy towards, because as things are changing with U.S. immigration policy, I'm sure you're out there freaking out. Me, as an immigration lawyer, I am also freaking out. So I know that you that may be undocumented are in a heightened state of freak out, okay? But this is something that you can put your energy towards, that if something does happen and you are picked up by ICE, you are already planning for your children. Your children are going to be protected, which, if you are anything like me, is always my biggest concern, is if anything happened to me, what will be of my children? Because for me as a parent, one of the things that really keeps me awake at night is what will happen to my children if something were to happen to me or my husband. Okay, so take the steps to make a plan. Okay, have it written out. Have your list of all the vital numbers that you need. Memorize a family member or a lawyer's number. Make sure you memorize these numbers so that if you are picked up by ICE, you're able to call. Have this preparedness plan so that your family know what to do if you are picked up by ICE, so that the person that you are signing as a caregiver knows what to do, who to call, and how to care for your children if you are picked up by ICE. It's really important that if your children have any medical conditions that need special treatment that you do at home, that you document that as well for the caregiver, because they will not know how to care for your child like you do. But you can document it so they know what they're supposed to be doing. If they have to give them medicine, how much of the medicine are they supposed to give? All of those things, you want to include that. I know it's very detailed, but you want to include that. Like I said before, you want to make sure that your children have as little disruption in their day-to-day as possible. and making sure that your caregiver knows, okay, this is where they go to school, this is what time they go to school. If they prefer home lunch versus school lunch, you want to make sure your caregiver knows that so that they are prepared to care for your children. All right, so I hope this has given you a place to start in your preparedness planning. If you have questions, please put it in the comments. If you have ideas, okay, yes, you know, I have mentioned a lot of different things, but if you have ideas, if you have things specific to your state that you want to let people know about, please put it in the comments, because this video is for you. It is to help undocumented immigrants and people that are documented, U.S. citizens, permanent residents that love and care for undocumented immigrants, to make sure that they have the resources to not only care for their children, but to care for themselves as well. So make sure you put comments about resources in your specific state, in your specific city in there, so that people that may be in your area can see that and use those resources. This video is meant to be a resource to help you know what to do and make sure that you are taking ownership of this whole process, just in case the worst case scenario happens and you are picked up by ICE. You know that you have taken steps to not just know your rights, but to exercise those rights and to care for your children and make sure that they have a family and a caregiver that is willing and able to care for them, and they can have as little disruption in their day-to-day as possible. If you are in a situation where you want a consultation and you want to know what your options are, if you qualify for, a green card or citizenship, whatever it may be that you are thinking about applying for, go ahead and schedule a strategy session with me, because as you know, part of your planning process and that know your rights process is figuring out, what do I qualify for? Right? Knowing all your immigration options will help you even plan better. Because if you know that you can apply for a green card, you know that you should have certain documentation ready so that if something does happen and you're picked up by ICE, that process can still continue and your lawyer, your family member know what to do. So find out what your immigration status is, what you could potentially qualify for. Go ahead, schedule that strategy session. It's a free 15-minute session where you get to ask me questions. I ask you questions, see if you qualify for anything, and make sure that you are leaving that meeting with knowledge, okay, about your specific immigration needs. If you want to schedule that, you can go to my website, lilylegal.com, and click on Contact Us, where you can select a date and time that works best for you for us to chat.